The old man's hands moved with infinite patience across the alien petals, his fingers tracing the veins of light that pulsed within each translucent bloom. The garden shimmered beneath Arinder's twin suns, a living mosaic of violet mist and crystalline leaves that hummed faintly, as if the flora themselves whispered memories of forgotten ages. Aaron worked in silence, his worn robe dusted with pollen that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Around him, the laughter of nobles echoed through the terraces above, mocking tones, playful and cruel. "Look at him," one sneered. "The human beggar tending dragon flowers. How poetic." Their jeweled boots clinked as they passed, their reflections dancing in the mirrored pools that surrounded the garden. Aaron did not look up. He never did. Beyond the palace gardens, the city of Arinder rose like a dream of impossible geometry, floating bridges of anti-gravity stone, towers that bent the light of the suns into halos, and massive airships drifting like whales across the sky. Dragons in humanoid form walked among nobles and soldiers, their eyes gleaming with cold fire, their scales hidden beneath robes woven from metallic threads. Peace, the bard said, had endured for 1,000 years since the first dragon war. Yet even the wind carried unease now. The sky felt heavier. The earth below, restless. A low tremor rippled through the soil, so subtle that only Aaron noticed. He placed his palm on the ground. The roots below pulsed. An ancient rhythm, deep and slow. It was not the rhythm of growth. It was the heartbeat of something that should have remained asleep. His expression did not change, but the faint light beneath his skin flickered once, then faded as quickly as it appeared. He continued his work, trimming a blossom that had begun to wilt, humming an old tune that none alive remembered. From the far end of the garden, the sound of mechanical wings drew near. A drone descended, a small, crystalline construct shaped like a dragonfly, its wings refracting the light into prisms. It projected a message in the air, a holographic image of the young dragon lord himself, arrogant and radiant. "Human," the voice echoed, "the east garden is to be cleared for the royal feast. You will remove the lower flora by sunset. Do not fail." The projection dissolved. Aaron nodded to the empty air and whispered, "As you command, my lord." His tone carried neither bitterness nor submission. Only weariness. When the suns dipped below the horizon, the light of the flowers grew stronger, bathing the garden in silver and blue. Alone in the quiet, Aaron walked toward the center where a single tree stood, ancient, massive, its bark metallic and roots coiling deep into the soil. He rested his hand upon it. For the first time in centuries, he spoke aloud in the old tongue, a sound that resonated through matter itself. The tree's surface rippled, revealing faint symbols that glowed faintly with gold fire. He whispered again, softer this time, and the symbols responded, forming the shape of a circle with a seed at its heart. The old man closed his eyes. The air around him shifted, the scent of ozone sharp and pure. Above, in the star-streaked sky, a thin line of crimson light cracked open like a wound. No one saw it but him. He exhaled slowly, and beneath the garden, something vast stirred. The next morning, the light above Arinder was strange. The twin suns burned with a faint halo of crimson, and the air itself hummed with static energy. Merchants in the upper districts complained that their levitating carts had malfunctioned, while in the skies, the majestic draconic ships, vast vessels powered by ancient plasma cores, drifted unsteadily. The great city, long a symbol of unshakable peace, trembled beneath an invisible hand. In the garden, Aaron felt the change immediately. The leaves whispered louder now, the roots twitching beneath the ground as if trying to flee. He knew this vibration. He had heard it once before, long ago, when the world itself had screamed. He rose from where he had been kneeling, dusting his hands against his robe. His old tools, a spade forged from alloy unknown to modern science, lay beside him. Once, that metal had been drawn from the heart of a dying star. Now, it was a mere gardening blade, dull and dented. The irony did not escape him. He turned toward the horizon. There, above the eastern ridge, a fracture of light hung in the sky, pulsing like a heartbeat. He could feel its rhythm inside his chest. Far above, in the floating palace, the nobles had gathered in fear. Lyriel, youngest of the royal line, stood by the balcony overlooking the city. She had never seen the old world's relics awakened before, yet something deep within her blood sang at the sight. The High Dragon Lord roared orders to his guards, commanding scientists and priests to interpret the omen. None could. They spoke of magnetic storms, failed reactors, and celestial interference, but their eyes betrayed them, they were afraid. Only Lyriel's gaze drifted down, to the garden below, where one man alone seemed unmoved by the chaos. That night, when the second sun fell, she descended to the lower terraces, slipping through the shadows until she found him. The garden glowed faintly with its bioluminescent flowers, shimmering in blues and greens, casting the old gardener in a soft aura. He did not turn when she approached. "You knew this would happen," she said, her voice trembling more from awe than accusation. "What are you hiding, human?" Aaron did not answer at once. He touched a blossom and watched it close its petals, as if retreating from the night. "The world forgets easily," he murmured. "Even its protectors." Lyriel stepped closer, the scales beneath her skin glinting faintly. "Protectors? You speak as if you were one of them." He smiled faintly, a sad, knowing curve of the lips. "I was once. Before the stars grew cold." Lightning forked across the heavens, illuminating his face. For an instant his eyes reflected the storm, not with fear, but with memory. The wind howled, and a deep, resonant hum rose from beneath the soil. Lyriel stumbled back as the great tree at the center of the garden came alive, its bark glowing, its branches stretching toward the rift above. She could see moving symbols etched into its surface, forming constellations unknown to any star chart. "What is this?" she whispered. Aaron looked skyward. "A reminder," he said softly. "That what was buried will always rise again." Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he lifted his hand. The same golden light that had once silenced gods flickered to life beneath his skin. The storm above the city refused to fade. For 3 days, the skies rippled with scarlet auroras, and strange metallic rain fell across Erinder, corroding glass and steel but leaving living things untouched. Scholars locked themselves in observatories, scanning the cosmic rift that pulsed beyond the atmosphere. They detected something impossible, a transmission, rhythmic and ancient, repeating every 7 seconds. Its frequency was older than the written record, older than the dragons themselves. The people whispered that the gods had returned. Aaron knew better. He had heard that signal before, on the night the first dragon war began. He spent those days in silence, tending the garden as though nothing had changed. The flowers now reacted to his presence. When he passed, their luminous petals turned toward him like faithful eyes. The princess came again on the 4th night, no longer with curiosity but with fear. "The council believes the rift is a weapon," she said, stepping closer, her voice breaking against the electric hum. "They're preparing for war. Tell me what you know." He looked up from the soil, his expression calm, yet his gaze carried the weight of centuries. "They would not survive another war," he replied. "Nor would this world." She hesitated, searching his face. "Then what is it? That light above us, what is it calling?" Aaron slowly removed the vine-woven glove from his left hand. Beneath it, his flesh shimmered with shifting metallic veins, alive with light. "It is calling me," he said. "Because I am the one who sealed it away." The princess stared, breath caught in her throat. "That's impossible. You're human. You can't be," he silenced her with a glance. The glow from his hand illuminated the glyphs carved into the great tree, and the symbols began to realign, responding to his presence. The air vibrated, and holographic projections flickered around them, memories trapped in the bark. She saw armies of light and fire clashing beneath alien skies, a man who looked exactly like Aaron wielding power that bent gravity and time itself. His body was younger, radiant, surrounded by dragons kneeling in reverence and terror. "You led them," she whispered. "You ended the first war." "I did," Aaron said quietly. "And I swore never to raise my hand again. But the thing we imprisoned, it has waited, learning, feeding on forgotten energy." His eyes lifted toward the rift, now pulsating like an open wound. "It calls itself the abyssal mind. When it wakes, it will unmake everything that breathes." The ground trembled, and a low resonance filled the air, like a chorus of 1,000 mechanical hearts. Lyriel clutched her chest, gasping. "It's inside the world," she said. He nodded. "Beneath the roots of creation. The balance was never meant to last forever." Above them, the crimson rift widened, tearing through clouds. From within, a single droplet of light fell, piercing the horizon like a falling star. Aaron's voice softened. "It begins again." The falling light struck the far mountains with the force of a dying sun. For an instant, the entire eastern sky turned white, and then came the sound, deep, wrong, like the scream of space itself being torn open. In Irinder, towers trembled and anti-gravity spires faltered, sending shards of crystal architecture raining down. The rift had anchored itself into the world. Beneath the garden, the ancient tree shuddered, its roots pulsing with gold and violet light. Aaron stood unmoving as the tremor spread, and when the shaking stopped, he whispered to the air, "The seal is gone." The next morning, the sky was no longer blue but streaked with black veins of energy, shifting like liquid metal. Flying vessels crashed midair, their plasma engines dead. The dragons could not take flight, the magnetic currents tore at their wings and scattered them from the sky. Panic spread through the upper cities. But in the garden, amid the chaos, the old man was calm. Lyriel found him kneeling before the glowing tree, murmuring in a language she could not understand. Around him, small orbs of golden light hovered, seeds, each vibrating with immense energy. "You should be with your people," he said softly when he sensed her. "They will need a leader when the stars begin to fall." She stepped closer, her hands trembling. "You're leaving," she said. "Where will you go?" His gaze drifted toward the horizon where the mountains still burned. "Downward," he said. "To where I buried the first god." The word sent a chill through her. "You mean the abyss?" He nodded once. "It feeds on decay, on the memory of fear. It will spread through minds before it spreads through matter." He placed one of the glowing seeds in her palm. "If I fail, plant this in the ruins of the garden. It will remember what I was." As the sun sank, the ground opened. From the east came a storm of black filaments, matter and antimatter fused, given hunger and thought. They slithered through the air, devouring light, sound, and motion. Irinder's weapons fired beams of pure fusion, but the shadows absorbed them, growing larger. Aaron lifted his hands and spoke a single word. The world responded. The gardens blazed with light as every plant erupted into motion, their roots weaving together to form a massive barrier of energy that shielded the palace. The strain showed on his face, but his eyes were clear. "The soil remembers me," he said. "I shaped it once, and it still obeys." Lyriel stared in awe as his frail form began to change. The lines of age dissolved, revealing beneath them an ageless figure of living light, wrapped in faint armor that shimmered like molten glass. The glow beneath his skin was no longer a secret, it was a star's heartbeat. He turned to her once more. "If I do not return, tell them the beggar kept his promise." Then he stepped forward, and the barrier opened. Beyond it, the storm of darkness awaited, whispering his true name. He did not flinch. The Immortal walked into the abyss. The descent into the abyss felt endless. Aaron moved through layers of the planet's crust that shimmered with trapped starlight, ancient caverns where gravity bent and the air sang like a distant choir. The further he went, the less real the world became, matter dissolved into equations of light, and time folded upon itself like paper burning at the edges. He no longer walked but drifted, guided by instinct older than the stars. Around him, the walls pulsed with veins of black fire, each beat synchronized to the rhythm of the rift above. The abyssal mind was awake. When he reached the core, it was waiting, a colossal presence of shifting geometry, a consciousness without shape. It spoke not in words but in thought, its voice vibrating through every atom. "You sealed me in silence, Arendarian," it said, using the name he had buried. "But silence breaks when time itself forgets your vow." Aaron's glow dimmed slightly. "You were never meant to think," he answered. "You were the void's hunger, the end that knew no self. I gave you a name to cage you, and now you speak it back to me." The air trembled. From the darkness, limbs of fractal energy extended, forming mockeries of life, dragons of pure data, their bodies made of lightless code, their eyes hollow stars. They lunged at him, but he raised his hand, and the ground beneath erupted in a burst of gold. Where light met shadow, entire dimensions flickered, unraveling like threads. "You've learned much from your prison," he said. "But I've learned more from my silence." Above, on the surface, the battle raged. The sky had turned into a storm of falling stars as the shadow creatures poured through the rift. Lyriel stood atop the shattered palace walls, holding the seed Aaron had given her. She could feel it pulsing, synchronized with the heartbeat beneath the earth. Every time it throbbed, she saw glimpses of him, his struggle, his light flickering against the infinite dark. "He's fighting alone," she whispered. But not for long. Closing her eyes, she pressed the seed into the soil. The ground shivered, and from it rose columns of radiant vines that spread across the city, absorbing the darkness like living conduits of hope. Deep below, Aaron felt it, her act of faith bridging their energies. The abyss roared, its form distorting as new light invaded its core. "You still believe they can rise above extinction," it thundered. "They always fall, Arendarian. Even gods decay." Aaron's voice was calm. "Then let them fall upward." With that, he unleashed his final power. His body fragmented into waves of golden light, each fragment carrying a fragment of his will. The cavern exploded in silence. For a heartbeat, the entire planet glowed as though a new star had ignited within its heart. Then everything went still. The silence that followed the explosion was not the silence of death, but of renewal. The abyss had vanished, its presence erased as if it had never been. In its place, a vast chamber of light pulsed beneath the planet's crust, calm, rhythmic, alive. Fragments of Aaron's essence drifted through the luminous air, merging with the roots of creation. Every seed, every tree, every breath of wind carried a piece of him now. He had not died. He had become what he had always tended, the life between worlds. Above, the city of Erinder stood in ruins yet shimmered with strange beauty. The vines that had risen from Lyriel's act of faith continued to grow, wrapping the shattered towers in radiant silver. They healed the wounded, purified the poisoned air, and hummed with the faint memory of an old gardener's song. The dragons, stripped of their arrogance, labored beside humans to rebuild. For the first time in millennia, there was no distinction between ruler and servant, between winged and earthbound. Lyriel often wandered the garden that had survived the destruction. It was the only place untouched by the war, as though guarded by invisible hands. She would kneel beside the central tree, now colossal, its branches reaching into the clouds, and whisper to it as if speaking to a friend. The tree always answered in its own way, a soft shimmer of leaves, a flicker of gold among the roots. Sometimes, she swore she could hear him breathe. "You kept your promise," she would say. "The soil remembers you." Years passed, then decades. The new world that emerged was unlike the old. Technology and nature no longer stood apart, they grew together. Biocrystal cities rose among forests of luminous trees, powered by living energy harvested from the earth itself. Every being knew of the immortal gardener, not as a legend, but as a presence that guided their growth. When the young sought strength, they went to the gardens. When the old sought peace, they listened to the hum of the leaves. On the 1000th dawn after the rift closed, the twin suns aligned for the first time in recorded history. Their combined light fell upon the great garden, and something stirred within the heart of the ancient tree. A figure of golden light stepped forth, not old, not young, ageless, radiant. Lyriel, now gray-haired but unbowed, smiled through her tears. "You always return where life begins," she whispered. The figure reached out, touching her forehead gently. "And where it is tended with love," came his voice, soft, eternal. Then he dissolved into the morning air, scattering as golden pollen across the world. Every flower bloomed that day, every leaf turned toward the suns, and the winds carried a single whisper across the living realms: the Protector endures, as long as life remembers his name.